Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The European Union's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, has warned this morning that the European Union is ready for no deal to be struck with the UK. And he says he doesn't know if the British government understands the EU's red lines. In the last few minutes, Theresa May's spokesperson has responded to those comments, saying the Prime Minister wants trade with the UK to be as frictionless as possible after Brexit. Well, joining me now is the Labour MP and chair of Vote Leave Watch, Chuka Umunna.
Good morning.
How significant do you think these interventions are from Michel Barnier?
I think it's very significant. First of all, on no deal, he said that isn't something that the European Union would want. They think it would be very damaging both to British businesses and their own businesses. But the bigger issue here, which he said something on, which you didn't mention, was this notion that we can get the exact same benefits as we enjoy at the moment as members of the single market.
That was really the point that Theresa May's spokesman was answering, saying they wanted to be frictionless, and he said it can't be frictionless.
He said you can't have that. And just to be clear for your viewers, what we're talking here about is your jobs, your rights at work, environmental protections and protections for the consumer. And we get those things through part of being by dint of being part of those two bodies, single market and customs union. Now, you don't need to be in the European Union to be a member of those things, but to get the benefits of the single market and the customs union, Michel Barnier was absolutely clear today that you need to be a member. And that is a bit of a wake-up reality for people here who suggest that you can get the exact same benefits as customs union membership and single market membership without being members of those things. We need to seek to be members of those things to get those benefits for your viewers.
The problem is, if we are members of those things, then we have to accept the authority of the European Court of Justice. We also have to accept freedom of movement for EU citizens. Both things which the government says the British people rejected in the referendum.
Two things about that. First of all, if we want to access the single market, sell our goods and services into it, and they are our biggest customer, we're going to have to comply with the rules and the standards there anyway. If we want to influence those things, we are far more likely to have influence as members of the single market. And on free movement has never been unconditional. So at the moment, as full members of the European Union, if we want to ask people to leave who's been here for 3 months, they haven't got a job and they've got no prospect of a job, we can do so. But we choose not to do that. And there are other members of the European single market who have restrictions on immigration.
You're not in a position, you can do that. Well, you can't really cut numbers significantly.
Well, you're not going to end free movement altogether, but you certainly can restrict it. And let's not forget in this debate, Adam, that the majority of immigration to this country comes from outside of the European Union. And ultimately, what all of this goes to is the economy, your viewers' jobs, their livelihoods. And that is under threat here. So that's the big issue.
So, I mean, it should be stressed that you're not on the same page as the Labour leadership on this.
Well, in terms of the outcome, absolutely. The Labour leadership is absolutely clear that jobs have to come first. In terms of the model, much more open-minded. What Michel Barnier has said, in terms of the model, if we want to achieve those exact same benefits, he has said you need to stay in the single market and the customs union. Both of those things to achieve.
Well, given that we are where we are, that British people, a majority, 52%, did vote to leave the European Union. Are you now saying that the best solution would be for us, yes, to stay in the customs union, stay in the single market, accept the consequences of that, but still to remain not members of the EU? I mean, in other words, to be close to a Norway or a Switzerland or an Iceland situation.
Yes, but Norway, Switzerland and Iceland are only a guide as to what we can achieve. We are the United Kingdom. We're the 5th largest economy in the world. We're, I think, the 2nd biggest in Europe. We're the 2nd biggest military power in Europe. We have huge influence. So I think we should be ambitious in these negotiations. We shouldn't be shy and we shouldn't lack confidence. We should be confident that we can stay in the single market and in the customs union and seek the reforms that we want to address some of the issues that have been raised by the public.
Wouldn't the best thing to be to say, OK, no deal, we're coming out of all these things in March, But now let's
March
start...
2019.
Yeah, in March 2019. But now let's start talking about that new relationship. Isn't that actually where we need to be?
Well, I don't know, what do you mean by that? In terms of we should just, I mean, I don't think we should throw in the towel. I don't think we should wave the white flag and say we can't achieve these things.
There's no alternative, is there? If we want to state that we're leaving the European Union, we have to first of all come out and then come back in, rather than try and remain half in and half out.
Well, I don't think remaining part of the European single market and the customs union is a half in, half out thing. It is an option, and I think we should keep all these options on the table as we go through this negotiation. I mean, there's no point having half your negotiation, getting to one point, then starting it all over again. To me, that doesn't seem like a very sensible way forward.
And do you think that's where we are heading? Because obviously you are in contact with Conservatives, like-minded Conservatives, on this question.
Well, I think there is a cross-party coalition growing and forming in the House of Commons that is absolutely clear that no deal would be absolutely unacceptable, and that as we start these negotiations, we should do so confidently as a UK ambitious in what it can achieve, with all options on the table. I don't think that is an unreasonable position to be in, and I think it's good and healthy that we work cross-party on these issues, because for me this goes beyond party, it goes beyond any particular MP. This is an issue of national interest, which is going to affect each and every single person watching this programme in a tangible way. And we, as parliamentarians, have got to get this right. And Parliament in this process, by the way, Adam, is not some kind of passive bystander that gets chunks of meat from the government. We're a player in this. We get to vote on the deal when it comes back to Parliament. So we've got to assert ourselves. We can't just rely on the executive here to give us bits of meat, tell us what's going on. We've got to be active in this process.
Well, we are told you're going to have a meaningful vote at the end of all of this.
Well, that's not certain, but there will be a vote. But whether it's meaningful is another thing.
But, I mean, as far as that is concerned, this is going to involve MPs acting collectively away from their individual party discipline, isn't it?
Well, frankly, on the issue as to whether we stayed in the European Union or not, during the EU referendum campaign, that is what happened. We worked cross-party. And frankly, I think...
A lot of people say it's settled there.
But I don't think it's settled, and I actually think that people find it healthy to see people working across party lines on issues they agree with. And I think people are fed up with the kind of yah-boo, automatic oppositional nature of British politics, and they like to see us put the national interest first, get away from some of the party politics where we just have a go at each other for the sake of it. This is the biggest issue hitting our country in a generation. I'm surprised it wasn't a bigger issue, frankly, in the general election. And it is potentially going to hammer my constituents. And it's the job of all of us to speak up for them and get the best possible deal.
Thank you very much indeed.
The EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, has today questioned whether the UK has understood the consequences of leaving the European Union. He said some people believe Britain could leave the single market and keep all of its benefits. But he said that was not possible. Our business editor, Simon Jack, is with me now. Simon, in effect, this is a sort of rejection of the UK government's negotiating position.
Well, the government's position, you're right, is that we are going to leave the single market, but its ambition is to try and keep the benefits of being a member of it. It also says we're leaving the customs union. That was his pre-election position. And he says if you think you can keep frictionless trade at the borders, then that is also not possible. And of course, this is a negotiation. And he's going to, someone will say he would say that, wouldn't he? But I think what it does highlight is that the gap between what the UK government thinks is possible that it can achieve and what the EU is saying is the reality is still very, very big indeed.
Simon, thank you very much.
In the last hour, the head of the CBI has said that Britain should stay in the single market beyond the deadline for leaving the EU in March 2019. That contradicts what the Prime Minister previously promised, but now business leaders think that with Theresa May's authority weakened, there's a chance for them to have their say. Not so, said the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, who warned that Britain has yet to face the facts about leaving the single market. Our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy, has this report.
It was only 6 months ago that Theresa May laid down her red lines to Carolyn Fairbairn, the head of Britain's biggest business group. The UK would leave the single market and the customs union, and no amount of lobbying would change that. But tonight, Miss Fairbairn has placed them firmly back on the table, determined that business will be heard.
This is a time for action, it's a time for decisions, it's a time for realism. We have suggested what we think is a common sense proposal for staying in the single market and a customs union until we have the new deal in force. This brings certainty, it unblocks investment decisions, it enables firms to plan with certainty.
Businesses weren't happy about being sidelined in the run-up to the Brexit negotiations and had begrudgingly gone along with what Theresa May had decided. But after last month's election returned a minority government here, suddenly all bets were off. And many of the big issues, like leaving the single market and the customs union that they thought were settled, are now back on the agenda. Of course, business demanding its say will anger many pro-Brexit MPs. Industry lobby groups across the UK, Ireland and, ironically, in Europe have quickly supported the CBI's position. But if she gets her way, it could mean the UK staying in the single market for years. These types of intricate deals take many years to negotiate, so we could be looking at 5, 6, 7 years hence.
Well, I think that we should be trying to do what we can as quickly as we can. But I think what is true is that we are a major services economy, so 40% of our exports are services. Services deals are notoriously difficult, and I think we need to recognise that.
But whatever she's thinking, there's another important guest at the table. The EU's chief negotiator laid out his thinking today and said come March 2019, the customs union and single market are off the menu.
Some people in the UK argue that one can leave the single market and keep all of its benefits. That is not possible. I've heard some people in the UK argue that one can leave the single market and build a customs union to achieve frictionless trade. That is not possible.
That's as may be, but much of industry now believes it could be possible, and they're prepared to go to battle to have their say. Though they'll face stiff resistance from Brexit campaigners, determined to stick to Plan A.
And our political editor, Gary Gibbon, joins us from Westminster now. Gary, what are they making of these interventions in Westminster?
Well, I think they're seeing it as evidence of what Siobhan was talking about there. A Prime Minister who's weakened, a business community, parts of the business community, the CBI obviously doesn't speak for everybody, that's emboldened. And I think what they're also wondering about is exactly what Michel Barnier was up to with this speech. And I think that tells you about a Brussels that is incredibly frustrated. One particular quote jumps out at you in this speech that he gave today. I have heard some people in the United Kingdom argue that one can leave the single market and the customs union and achieve frictionless trade nonetheless. Well, who are these people he's met? Well, we know one person he met recently, and it was David Davis. He's talking about the British government there, and he's saying they're talking about things that are not possible. There is also a sense that maybe Michel Barnier is trying to wave over to the business lobby over here and say, look, it is a clear choice, a very big break from Europe, or you stay in the single market and the customs union, not a customs union, a distinction which is very important to people who try and say that you can make your own special, bespoke British version of a customs union. He says that wouldn't work either. And he may be feeling, as he looks across the channel tonight, that the CBI is responding to that. I think what it all tells you is what an incredibly fluid situation has been created by the general election result. There was Theresa May trying to get a massive mandate, and at the end of it all, there are the losing side in the referendum feeling they see potential now, and the winning side in the EU referendum sensing a bit of danger.
Gary Gibbon at Westminster.
More Brexit now, because earlier this evening, the Director General of the CBI, Carolyn Fairbairn, warned in a lecture at the LSE that Brexit uncertainty is starting to damage the UK economy. She cited companies changing plans and slowing investment in anticipation of what she called the serious disruption that would ensue if the UK were to leave the EU without a deal. Her comments came as International Trade Minister Liam Fox appeared to add his weight to his Cabinet colleague Andrea Leadsome's recent contention that reporting unwelcome statistics about Brexit was somehow unpatriotic. He claimed in the Commons that some elements of the media would rather see Britain fail than Brexit succeed. And Carolyn Fairbairn joins me now. It's a little crass, that conflation of Brexit with Britain, but it speaks perhaps to a difficult truth for you, which is when you describe in good faith an environment you consider less than conducive to business, you run the risk of making that environment even less conducive to business, talking the country down, if you will.
Well, I think one of the things that is just really important to have now is a realistic debate. And I think that when we hear things from firms across the country, large and small, about the way uncertainty is beginning to affect investment decisions, I think it's very important that we say that, but also that we put ideas on the table. So what we're doing today is putting an idea on the table that's not about the weather of Brexit. It's very, very clearly about the how.
And the weather with an H rather than the...
Sorry?
The weather with an H, whether we do it. There's no question.
Weather with an
Yes.
H.
Yeah.
It's about how, and it's about how we have a Brexit that protects jobs and investment. And that's the point we're making. And a proposal that would mean that the UK would stay in the single market and a customs union as a bridge to the future deal.
And
it has an added advantage of there would be only one transition for business.
How long's the bridge?
As short as practically possible.
How long? How long?
Well, I think it's very difficult to tell because it depends what the final point is. The final point is very different from today. It may take longer. I mean, we know that the Canada Free Trade deal took 7 years. We hope it would be very much shorter than that. I think it's a really important point to make that business has no interest in something that is open-ended and more uncertainty. So as short as practically possible, but I think something that gives businesses the time to adapt and certainty today.
What you say is very important to have this debate now. Why now? Why not a year ago or in January after the Lancaster House speech?
There is something very important about now because we are heading into the time where companies plan their investment. And what we're seeing is that every sector, every company has a different tipping point, a point at which they start planning things. So, for example, a bakery in Northern Ireland we know well, it would take them 20 months if they wanted to relocate to the Republic because of tariffs. So they are starting to think now about what they have to do. Airlines, it's a year before because they are thinking about their passenger reservations. So every company has a tipping point. We're heading into that period now. And that's why we're beginning to hear, I think, much more concern about our members about those cliff edges.
You didn't mention the election, and yet you wouldn't have made this speech if Theresa May had secured a 3-figure majority.
I think we would have done, actually.
Word for word?
I think we would have done, because I think, as I say, I think we have an important role to play at the moment to talk about what the grassroots of businesses, large and small across the country, are saying. And they are saying that this is now beginning to bite. And I think it's very important that we are able to say that, but that we also have a solution on the table, a simple solution that would bring a lot more...
Except it's not a solution in the strictest sense of the word. It's a holding tactic. It's a postponement of, I suppose, either pain or the unknown, isn't it?
Well, I think that the question it answers is how you give more confidence to business now to invest for the future. So, the economy is a flywheel. So investment today is jobs in the future. And I think our priority at the moment is that, because it is so important for growth in the future. So let's deal with that problem first.
And yet, the almost irresistible subtext of all of this is that when we reach the end of the bridge, things at that end can't be as good as they were at this end.
I think that's an area where we should be optimistic. So I think we are still saying that we need to get to an in-principle agreement by March 2019. And one of the important benefits of the proposal we put on the table today is that you can focus all the effort on that final deal. You're not talking about some interim other transitional arrangement which would take up a lot of time. So we think it would make it more likely to get to that outline deal by March 2019.
Except, of course, March 2019 is the date upon which an awful lot of people will be expecting freedom of movement to end immediately, and your proposal would, well, continue it indefinitely.
Not indefinitely. I mean, I think that...
Well, indefinitely as in you can't tell me how long your bridge is.
But firms accept that freedom of movement will end. And again, this is about trade-offs and it's about timing. So firms are committed to, we know we're going to need to increase training, we are going to need to skill up to be able to fill the gaps that are created. That is going to take time. So I think the other thing that the Bridge to the Future will give us is the chance to prepare, the chance to get ready. So I think that is a transition as well.
I think a lot of people watching may be thinking that you'd quite like to stay on the bridge forever, Carolyn Fairbairn. They may see you as one of these uncrushed saboteurs.
Really clear that is not the case. So, I mean, I just go back to this point that businesses do want certainty. The idea of another open-ended period of uncertainty is not right. So, as short as practically possible, but long enough for the government, for firms, for people to adapt. Businesses do think in years, and they will need time to get ready. So, it's a practical proposal that gives the certainty now and that bridge to the future.
It's practical, but it's almost completely unpolitical. Is that definition of your role. You represent the interests of your members. You don't worry about the difficulty that a Prime Minister may have in delivering the plan you describe.
Well, I think everybody has an interest in the success of the economy and jobs and prosperity. And I think one of the things that we have seen since the election, it's very welcome, actually, is the economy back centre stage. People are talking about it. It is about the way we're going to pay for public services. It is going to be about the way we have jobs for our children. So that's where I think this comes together. And that's why I think we do have a responsibility as business to talk about investment today, jobs in the future. So I'm hoping that politics and economics can come together in this.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Carolyn Fairbairn, many thanks indeed.